Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. We're going to have a great episode. We're going to be speaking with Sasha and Janet Lessin about the Anunnaki. The book we're going to be covering is Anunnaki, False Gods. I don't know what that's about, but we are going to find out tonight. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healings, and psychic readings. If you've been listening to the show, you get an idea of what I'm like and who I am. And so if there are things that you need help with, a problem at work, a problem in your relationship, maybe there's some health concerns that you need to straighten out, give me a call, send me an email, and we can have a one-on-one discussion about what you can do to bring health, healing, and wholeness back into your life. I also want to remind you that our movie icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, is available for digital download on Amazon.com for $1.99. But if you want to get a hard copy in your hand, you can go to soulhealer.com, where we have this great offer going on. Purchase icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, Man-Made, the Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, and Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4, two of my 4 books, plus the DVD, and you get like $20 off the value. You can't even get a price like that on Amazon. And the best part is they all come autographed by me, and that's priceless. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can learn to become a medical intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. And right now, all of their training programs are on sale, up to 40% off. So check it out, www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. And if you're not quite sure if you're intuitive or not, you can check out their Jumpstart Your Intuition program, which is a free digital download, 50 pages of wonderful information to get you moving forward in your new career. Well, I think we have Sasha and Janet on the line, and let me just do a brief introduction, because we're going to be talking about the Anunnaki. But what was their involvement with humanity in our history? Were they a race of extraterrestrials who came to Earth? If so, what did they come here for? Sasha and Janet Lessin studied with the late Zecharia Sitchin for many years, discover what they've uncovered regarding the truth of our past. Their new book is Anunnaki, False Gods, and their webpages are enkispeaks.com and extraterrestrialcontact.com. So please welcome to the show, Janet and Sasha Lessin. Hey guys, are you there?
Hi, Dr. Rita. Aloha.
Yeah, it's great to be able to hear you. Your books show that we have so much interest.
Thank you for inviting us to the show.
Oh, and I'm so glad to have you. And I think we're going to have a very lively, deep conversation. But I'm just going to put this out here up front, so as we move through the show, you don't think that I'm being adversarial, but I have some questions regarding the Anunnaki and Mr. Sitchin's work that I wasn't able to resolve in my own studies. And so I'm going to throw them out at you because, you are his advocates and have studied with him for a long time. And I figure, well, if I couldn't figure out the information, you guys surely should be able to give me some kind of answer to what I've been trying to uncover. Sound
Everything
good?
you said is right on, except I ain't an advocate. I'm a college professor, and I look at what Sitchin said, and I look at what other people said, and I'm not attached or an advocate. I'm just seeing what we can cut through the most information with, make the best predictions, both retroactively and positively. And so I think everybody with conflicting views has something to contribute if we can just get what's useful. The reality is an elephant, and we grab at different places. So I ain't an advocate, but I certainly am immersed in this material.
Fair enough. And I think your comment is great, how we each glean different pieces, and the more pieces people throw on the table, it gives you different viewpoints and a different way to go, oh, well, maybe that's right. Or, well, that doesn't really work with how I'm viewing things. And I really appreciate, your guys' work and the work that so many other people are doing and putting out there to open up this mystery of our past, which it seems what we were taught in school, it was not the truth.
Right on. And so we don't have the answer. I don't even know if there is such an answer, a thing as the answer. I think we all have a piece of the puzzle, and this is the group Gestalt, and together we're co-creating reality and existence. So that's what we're finding, is that this is a holographic universe, and that we're all adding to it. We're all creating it. So we're looking at the best possible outcome, which will create a reality which will honor life and consciousness and allow us to have the best lives that we can, individually and collectively. And so by doing that, we go back into the past and we see what happened before and the different concepts. But, so much has been hijacked and manipulated and changed over time that I don't think we're ever going to get the reality. And we're learning from quantum physics that reality is constantly changing, and that what you think in the now and believe in the now can affect the future and the past.
But when we examine the hierarchical, super competitive society that imprinted our society with its disdain for women and slavery and for life in general, we can see that that is an archetype that we carry, and by becoming conscious of it, we are no longer its slaves, but we can use some of the good things like order and safety and things like that without the bad things like enslavement and war.
Agreed. And we're going to get into this a whole lot more. So let's kind of backtrack, because you're new to the show. And what got you started studying the Anunnaki and ancient mysteries in general?
Well, when I was a kid, I was really taken by the story of Noah and getting all those animals. I guess he must have been a few miles from his ark on the boat and all that. And I thought it was all pretty silly. And then I studied anthropology, and that's what we started studying, things like that. And it didn't make sense. The anthropology I studied had the assumption of macroevolution, which is a fallacy, that we came from primates that were already here, and that the Indians who wound up in South America came across the Bering Strait, all kinds of things that did not make any sense and did not dovetail with the evidence. Then when I started working with Sitchin, I started out just helping my friends out with the hospitality and the prophets conferences, and he was one of the featured presenters, and he did this training, and I signed up for it, and wow, he could account for the data that my anthropologist teachers could not account for. He showed there was predictions that the Sumerians, who lacked telescopes, had about the rotation of Uranus and Neptune. He had overwhelming evidence from many, many cultures that pointed to large Homo sapiens like us came here for gold and adapted their genome to the this planet to make mind slaves. They used some genes from the ancestor of Bigfoot, namely Homo erectus, a little copper, a little clay, And they made these creatures, us, that were really smart and started threatening their hegemony.
And as for me, to answer that question, I'm a lifelong experiencer, and I've had contact going literally back to the crib. I came into third dimensional physicality, and I remembered many of my past lives. I was able to see the interdimensional beings. I was able to see ghosts and interact with them. And so my reality growing up, I had to adapt and kind of conform to the Judeo-Christian world around me. My parents were very Christian and conventional in their beliefs, and everybody around me. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I had to kind of back off until Von Daniken came along. I studied Velikovsky. I had an older brother, thank God, and he helped me unravel a lot of these mysteries. And plus, I constantly had sightings in the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, and I would invite my friends to do sleep outs with me, and I'd say, if you want to see a UFO, let's sleep out tonight. And what I've discovered is that there's something about me as an experiencer contactee, that when people were hanging out with me, the veil would grow thin, and they too would see UFOs. And I'd be very careful not to lead the witness, but I'd see something, and they'd say, okay, what do you see? And they would explain things. This is all through my childhood and all through life, basically.
Well, you must have been the party girl.
Yeah, I was always strange. My name was Janet Planet when I was a little girl.
We're going to be talking. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just said we met in '97, and when I met Dr. Lessin, I didn't know where he was coming from, so I didn't know how to talk about ETs and stuff like that. In my new relationship, I was interested in finding love. And so I left the William Bromley's Gods of Eden's on the back of the toilet in his bathroom. And then one day he came out, and it sat there for the longest time. But I was like, okay, what can we do here? And he came out and he said, do you know what that is? This is? I go, yes. He said, I go, yes. So we ran down to Borders, it was still open those days, and bought everything. And Dr. Lessin was, staying up nights, started writing, and he's been addicted ever since to this level of research.
That's great. That's a great story.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking a lot about the Anunnaki. For the listeners that are not familiar with Zecharia Sitchin's work, or, the Anunnaki, except for maybe they've heard that name and they know that there's some kind of extraterrestrials. Can you provide, and just a brief, because we're going to dig more, but just a brief history into who they were?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah. On the planet Nibiru, which is a planet that passes through our inner solar system every 3,600 years, a atmospheric crisis made them look for gold in abundance to make into white powder of monoatomic gold. And they sent an expedition 450,000 years ago to Earth, and they found lots of gold in Africa. And their miners revolted after a while over harsh conditions. And so their chief scientist said, let's adapt our genome and make a slave race. There's these other intelligent hominids here, Homo erectus, and we know of them from our home planet. We know who they are. They're intelligent. And they're very strong and very smart. And we have mind slaves. And of course, he this guy Enki kept on breeding with the prettiest of the mind slaves and so forth several times. And ultimately, he was the father of one of them, which became Noah, to go back to my story. And when the commander, Enlil, or Yahweh, said, let them drown. We're not supposed to have this slave species anyhow. And they're threatening to us, and they're too smart. Let them drown. Enki basically put a computer program in Noah's wall computer, and then he told him how to make the submersible and so forth. They decided to rule through Noah's sons. and split the world up into these different areas of authority. The story goes on and on, but that's sort of the background. Janet will have her view of the whole thing, feminist view. Tell it, baby.
Well, we'll let Dr. Rita ask more questions, and then we'll get into this in greater depth later. So is that a good background for you?
No, that's a good background. And we know so much information about them. How?
Okay, so that it's inscribed on these itty-bitty things, clay tablets, in a writing called cuneiform that Zecharia Sitchin collected these. He had the best collection of anybody, and it's on the base of all these monuments. We started knowing about it in general in the West from the Bible, which was a compilation many thousand years later of earlier tales, and kept tracking back the earlier tales and the earlier sites where temples were built on earlier temples and so forth, until we get back down to some very early settlements in Iraq and Turkey, where they first had their settlement. They called it ancient Sumer, at the base of statues, and all the tales from told slightly different in the metaphors of whatever language it was. We get the same tales, and enough in the libraries that were burned and the clay was fired, and they made rollers so they could print a whole bunch of these. We get the same tales of how the Anunnaki. This is what the Anunnaki, these big, tall, 8 to 12 feet people for the most part, dictated to their scribes, who were the hybrids in the favored line that was working for them, and they wrote these tales. We came across here and we went for gold, and after the flood we decided to divide up the world, and then we had a nuclear exchange which almost killed everybody.
Just a slight. I love the nuclear exchange part. It always makes you go, huh?
Huh?
Huh? Okay.
They had these factions.
Wait, okay. Better ask the question. Go ahead. What do you want to ask?
This is one question. Okay, so this is my burning question, and I had tried to get Zecharia on the show, but at that point in time, he was very ill, and it never happened. So I couldn't ask him my burning question, and my question is about the gold. I mean, I've done so much research and read, any transcription of a tablet that I could find, but I never could find the gold. And his whole premise is based on them coming here for the gold, and I never could find it. Were you able to actually read translations that talked about the gold? I mean, where did that understanding come from?
I don't remember it ever being a metaphor, except for when it's very explicit, like the manna from heaven, and then they describe it in the detail that makes us think that it's white powder of monoatomic gold, and different allusions to what it's made. And the fact that it's consistent with the levitation of heavy rocks that we know that they had in both the south of Africa along the lanes that Tellinger found, and in the area under Heliopolis. It was called the landing platform in Lebanon.
And the mines are still there in South Africa. We have the ancient mines.
They're still there.
They were mining gold, and we still have gold as the major value in the planet to this day. So it's consistent through the past and through the story. So there's something very important about gold. What makes gold so important over anything else, right? It could be silver. It could be. So gold is the standard that they had because it was important for their preservation of life, both as a system to coat the atmosphere of their planet, which was dying because the shield was thin, and as an element that they ingested that gave them longevity.
Yeah, when they realized that they were aging too fast on this planet and that they were too short, like Inanna was only 66 inches, they drastically started a program to extend their life and deal with how hard it was to the radiation exposure on this planet.
Right, because they weren't from this planet, so I guess their bodies weren't designed to necessarily be in this atmosphere or in this level of sunlight kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So then, answer to your question, we've never seen it. I have never seen anything in Sumerian. I don't remember what the Sumerian words were. I've just read secondary things where other people use the word gold. So I don't have the primary.
But it makes sense. Plus, they have found ruins where they have this monatomic gold, so it was very valuable.
Yeah,
makes sense.
And in their place in Titicaca, in Tiwanaku, they had the walls were totally lined with gold, and the symbolism with gold, and they're always, when they're saying the gold is for the gods, the other stuff of slaves you can is for Caesar, that kind of thing, and the terrible stories in the Bible about. After the fall of Jericho, this one guy took a gold chalice, and so God killed his kids and his wife and everybody, his dogs and his goats. So you can see by that kind of a tale, these greedy, monstrous, genocidal kings who called themselves gods, who were a terrible lot, just like our current political leaders behind the scenes, with very, very little regard for life and the stifling of any opposition or challenging views.
And we're related to them. We do the same thing.
We are them.
We are they.
Well, I mean, one of the things that makes me not laugh, but go, what was that about? When you read mythology, whether it is Sumerian cosmology or Indian, I mean, it doesn't matter what culture, you read their stories, and the gods are always fighting. They're always fighting or vying for power over one and the other. Why do we as a culture have this view that God is all loving when the stories that we have about him, he's not so kind?
I think what happens is the opposite archetype and the dichotomy within his culture was Enki, who in the Bible becomes Adonai, who does something loving, versus Yahweh, who does all these horrendous things. And I think that one of the interesting things that attracted Enki to Homo erectus, or Bigfoot in the first place, is that this creature was loving and compassionate, and somehow was going around letting all the other animals out of his traps, and seemed to be able to communicate without having much language, but to really let people feel things. And so Enki was fascinated by this creature and hoped, and so did Nimma and his nephew Nigashidu, who were on the team. They hoped to create beings that would not be madly, murderously in competition with each other, and would exhibit more compassion. And that was the hope, that when the time was right and we are ready to move out of this matrix that the Anunnaki imposed upon us, and maintained by divide and conquer through their hybrids, and then now is that time that they have said they are going to come back December 21st, 2012, to help us be free of this matrix of enslavement and the stifling of consciousness.
So just to recap, God is kind of a title, and whoever was ruling at that point had different characteristics and qualities than, the previous or the later gods. So Yahweh, who was Enlil, didn't really like humanity and wanted to see us destroyed, and Enki and a lot of people in his clan wanted to preserve humanity. So there you have the dichotomy and the different points of view. And even within that, though, Enki did not give us physical immortality. They shut off 256 strands of DNA.
Oh, okay, well...
do you want to say something else? Go
okay, well, just that the Federation of Planets basically sent a representative several times to the king of Nibiru, who then ordered his son, the commander, and all the other Nibirans to stop trying to snuff these people out and assist them in their evolution. And that's the orders that have since come down from Nibiru, from the representative of higher power called Galzu, saying, help these people. Help them get free of this mess that we left them in.
okay. I am like, where do we go from here? Back up. Well, you're just kind of going, throwing this great information. I'm like, all right, talk a little bit about the Galactic Federation, because, well, one, we've never talked about that on this show, but I'm not sure that all of my listeners know what you're talking about.
Okay. They had a character, his name was Galzu, who revealed himself to the Anunnaki through Nimma and Enki and various characters. He actually appeared to Enlil as well, and he apparently was a representative of the creator of all. So even the gods believed in a higher power, and they referenced the Federation various times because they said that they were defying the rules of the Federation by creating human beings. They weren't allowed to create a slave species. It was illegal to create a slave species. So we have all these references to, higher beings and the Federation. And as a contactee, I've had a lot of contact with many different species. So we're correlating all this information from the ancient, looking through the historical, looking through the writing in the cuneiforms, and it's not just Sitchin, there's Kramer and other people that have deciphered these texts, and then we're pulling in the experiencers, of which there are probably, the estimates are like something like 60 million contactee experiencers. So this is a global program of, and we had one of our whistleblowers come on and say that everybody, all 7.5 billion people have been picked up at some point, but they do an initial evaluation, they get picked up about 4 or 5 times, and then they decide which ones are going to continue in this program that goes on for basically their lives and through many generations. So go ahead, Dr. Lessin. You talk
actually, to understand this story of the higher power and how the Anunnaki came about, realizing they had been guided to save us and help us, is that when Enlil said, the commander said, let these Earthlings drown, they're illegal anyway. And Anu said, well, here, I'm going to send a fleet of rocket ships to take whatever gold you've gotten to evacuate. Whoever wants to be evacuated, tell the astronauts who have bred with the Earthlings to go to the high mountains and so forth. And so one of the rocket ships that came empty to get more gold bore this guy called Galzu, who had a sealed missive, which they opened. They said, and it says, I'm the plenipotentiary for Anu. I speak for him. You must, and he told them what to do. You must not leave this planet. So they were fixing to leave. If you leave this planet, you're going to die of aging because you've been on Earth too long. You got to just circle the Earth and then come back down. And so forth. He went through a whole bunch of things. He also gave Enki the computer program that he gave to Noah. And so once the Anunnaki got together and they started talking about how this guy Galzu kept intervening, they realized that they had been tricked. Anu realized from the beginning the idea that they would have to go for gold to Earth had been all part of a plan, is what he thought. A plan that the creator of all had for them, that we have all been manipulated to be just where we are, with us talking to Rita Louise on the radio right now. It's all part of the same plan.
Do you think that the creator of all's plan is a good plan, or is there manipulation behind the manipulation going on? It kind of sounds that way.
I think the good and bad is a spurious dichotomy, and everything that is related to everything else that is.
The dichotomy is created to diversify creation. We need to have self and not self, and the polarity in order to have, it's kind of like our where we paint our colors, that we need to have something to
contrast.
The contrast. We need the contrast. For some reason, this universe needs a contrast, the polar opposite, in order to create variety and diversification. So at the lowest level of physicality is 3D, and the highest level is source. And there's many dimensions, many levels, many multiverses. And, we're here down in the lowest, densest level to figure out how to reach heaven on earth, how to experience everything there is from this 3D level perception, and not be dead, and not die, not leave our form. So this is the grand experience, is that we keep pushing it down lower and lower, and that keeps broadening the dichotomy, and it creates a wider spectrum for creation.
And my problem with Sitchin partly is that he only talks about the travel by rocket ships, and he talks about communication without people having to physically travel back and forth. But what we know about our own exchange with Serpo and our own covert government's anti-gravity craft is that basically they don't need to have rocket ships like that to transport. They don't have to wait for every 3,600 years to visit Earth, because it's quite within the means of someone that knows how to find the heavy gravitons within the surface of the light, or gravitons, which is how you change dimensions. So our military knows that, and they've known it since the 50s.
So we think Sitchin was probably playing it safe. He started writing in the 70s. We always view things through our own eyes, and so he only knew what he knew. So when, if we're looking at something and we don't know how to explain it, we explain it through who we are, and he was just explaining it through who he was at the time, and so he made it rocket ships.
Yeah, and they did have rocket ships. The Gilgamesh account is just so explicit about a rocket ship taking off and burning the bushes around it and making ash that falls on everybody, and it's like totally, that was a rocket ship, and then there's other things that are obviously Vaimanas that settle down without making all that that are just like our flying discs.
Right. So they had all kinds of technology, and that's why our military is invading Iraq and Iran to get the Stargate technology. Although we have whistleblowers that say we have several different Stargate type programs, plus we have time travel programs. So that's what we're doing here as investigators, is piecing together the whole continuum and all the information, because there is a story that emerges, but no one had the complete story.
But the ultimate thing is that they're not gods. And just because they did things a certain way and got us doing them doesn't mean we have to keep doing them. We are a very conscious species, capable of the best and the worst. And we can look at what we think is the worst and say, what needs are being met by, let's say we have a hyper-greedy society. People have to have more than the other. What greedy part of the world, or greedy part of each of us, what do you really need? And maybe it usually comes down to really need attention, a minimum safety, things like that. And so there's a way, I think, of coming to peace with the Anunnaki archetypes or models within us that are parts of us, and honoring those, and at the same time embracing a lot more inclusive and loving archetypes that are also available to us, particularly by heroes like the Buddha and Jesus, who stood up against this control and fear system.
Well, what impact do you think the Anunnaki had on the development of early culture on Earth? I mean, you said that they were a slave species, but when you think of like slaves in, early America, for example, they weren't necessarily educated or, taken care of. They were, they weren't even taken care of as good as a pet. And so how do you think they influenced the development of our culture, our belief systems, what society has become?
Oh, I think that's right on. In those awful pictures you have of the way slaves were treated in in the New World is not dissimilar to what you should see the pictures of people being whipped in South Africa by these overseers. Slavery is what happens though is after a while when the slaves weren't a use anymore, they were allowed to form their own communities in the south of Africa, in the Southeast Africa, and they formed tribes and they got close to nature and they developed their own ways and they migrated. And so there's that. Then there's the extra special slaves that basically Enki 300,000 years ago was the initial slaves, starting with clones. Then 200,000 years ago, he bred with these two girls, and they had kids. They had these incredible, genius children, Dappa and Titi. And these children scared the royalty of Nibiru. They said, oh my gosh, this is just as smart as our kids. And there's millions of them. There's only 1,000 of us. We've got to make sure that they never unite against us. And there was this one prince among them who was at one point going to be king of Nibiru, he said, well, I'm going to organize these humans, these earthlings, and we're going to take over Earth. And then he built a tower at Babylon and became the so-called Tower of Babel. And then we're going to take my rightful kingdom, which is Nibiru too. So these guys started warring with each other, and they wound up with a nuclear exchange that, well, first of all, wiped out a whole bunch of beautiful stuff, but then the fallout blew back over the ones that dropped the bombs, and this was in 2024 BCE, and they're a terrible example of how to live. They ruined their own planet. They almost extinguished themselves, and they brought nuclear war to this planet too.
But on the other hand, we wouldn't have our civilization if it wasn't for the Anunnaki. We wouldn't have life because they gave us the food basis. We didn't have the animal life. They introduced cattle and sheep and chickens and all these animals that we consume. They introduced our grains and a lot of the foods there. They introduced even our
introduced or developed.
They brought them from Nibiru, and they introduced onto
and the wheel and the kiln.
So they decided after the flood to give us civilization because it's like a very dysfunctional codependent relationship. They decided they needed us as much as we needed them. And it's a very primitive and harsh planet. So they needed to up-level the living conditions in order for the population to expand, because slaves don't live very long and there's no reason for souls to incarnate if they're strictly slaves. So they had to give us the illusion, like we have now, that we're free people, we have free will, and that we're living happy lives. We're still in this slave system. We're in a corporate economic slave system. This is still the Anunnaki. They're ruling us at the highest level. They've gone behind they used to walk among us. It was discovered that they could be hurt or killed, so they went behind the ziggurats. They went behind the priesthood, behind the kingship. There was a major decision that a lot of them were going to leave. They got tired of it. Some stayed. We're not sure exactly who stayed, who left, or even if leaving and staying is relevant, because they have stargates and they could be here in an instant. But we're looking at all these factors. So we still have an Anunnaki civilization. And then we talked to like Neil Freer. He said, yeah, we have all these other species and aliens visiting us, and that's very fine and dandy. However, we are the Anunnaki and they are we. And basically, without humanity, they probably would have extincted themselves by now, because they lacked hybrid vigor and they were no longer able to procreate at a level to sustain their civilization. So they needed to have hybrid vigor. So the hybrid, just like the Greys are doing hybrids with humans, the hybrid human Anunnaki was the next generation of where they were evolving to. And so they just need to get off it and allow us to become conscious. And the major control mechanisms are religion and politics. And they divide and conquer by, we create these alliances with different religions, different countries, and they pit us one against another in war, in endless, ceaseless wars.
Well, I would like to add to the way, besides religion and politics, one of their geniuses, a fellow named Nana, or Allah, added trade and the idea of getting people in debt as another way of maintaining their matrix.
Right. Money is a slave system, too. Other planets.
Well, come on, keeping everybody in a state of fear.
Yeah.
Major control mechanism. Did they keep control of the planet? I mean, you hear stories about, the bloodline that Queen Victoria is related to, the Bushes, and they're related to the Pope, and they're related to, and all of these people that are in power are all have blood connections. Would that be part of what you're talking about?
Most definitely. This is the line that they chose to, and initially these leaders were supposed to rule with kindness and help us develop a high society. Somewhere along the line, it got very warped, and we're looking at that. What happened? Do we have interdimensional archons, as they call them, the reptilians? Are there other species that have come in? There's a story by Thoth, who's also known as Ningishita, and he said that in the Emerald Tablets, that he discovered that the council members were being taken over by interdimensional beings that began to rule, and he discovered them and he defeated them, and he said he had to sink Atlantis in order to stop this faction from ruling over them. But he said, beware, even though we defeated them this time around, they will be back. And so that might be part of this war behind the war, where they're trying to figure out how to overcome this negative element. And this is all part of the grand continuum of ever-increasing polarity, light and dark, good and evil, so that we can further diversify creation.
So is it just the Anunnaki that are battling with each other? You've kind of brought up the reptilians and the Greys, or is there a bigger war going on for planet Earth?
There's a much bigger war going on. In 1947, the remnants of the German army took their submarines from Tierra del Fuego in Argentina to their base in Antarctica. And Admiral Byrd went there with a full fleet, including the seaplane, airplane tender, Pine Island, and to engage the entrance to this cave to an underwater lake where the Nazis had a place called Neuschwabenland, which had something like 20,000 Ukrainian women, and it is a huge city underneath there. And the British had tried twice to blow up the entrance, and they had been defeated and wiped out. So the Joint Command sent Byrd down in 47. Out of this cave came anti-grav craft and blasted his planes, sunk the Pine Island, killed 64 Marines. Byrd escaped, and at the same time, it looked like we were through, because these craft could dart in and out and shoot down our craft. We didn't stand a chance. But at that time, some craft that were spying on our atomic stuff at Los Alamos crashed, and we treated the survivor well, and they wound up doing an exchange where we sent 12 Americans to the planet Serpa, which is in the Zeta Reticuli group, and they sent an ambassador and helped us get our own anti-grav craft, so the Nazis didn't wind up taking over that way, although from Operation Paperclip, they did take over the CIA and the government to a large degree. But at least the overt Nazis were, and their allies, who were reptilians, evidently, that were already in Antarctica. At least that's what they say, and they were allied with a reptilian faction that also came out of Tibet. They were planning to take over not just Earth, but this whole sector of the galaxy. That stuff's all really well documented by the Defense Information Agency releases. Len Kasten has a recent book that's really good called Serpo, Secret
Journey to Planet Serpo.
Journey to Planet Serpo. Yeah.
Right. So we have a lot of whistleblowers that are coming forth about the real military and the galactic war and where it's been going. We have all these different reports, so we're piecing it together. Some things don't quite fit, but it does appear that we've had a a series of wars since the beginning, and that they are fighting over the earth. We're not sure exactly who all the factions are, but it appears that there are reptilians, humanoids of various kinds, mantis. The Greys could be a life form, but they also might be like the droids, the androids, kind of like in Star Wars.
The tall white brothers.
And there's the tall whites, which the Anunnaki are part of. So it's very Star Warian, very complex when you start looking at it. But the major faction has been the Anunnaki. Also, there was probably a reptoid species that developed here, and it looks like there is an inner Earth society. So there's more than just the 7.5 billion humans on top, and we're not sure how large the inner Earth society is or how many species are within that society, different variations. But apparently like a humanoid species and a reptilian species.
Do you believe that the reptilian species was here prior to the Anunnaki coming to Earth?
I think both are true. I think there's a reptilian species that is in the galaxy, and I think these species are just like Star Trek. They're on many different worlds. So in a Star Trekian future, humans have settled in millions of planets, right? And so the reptilians are settled in many planets. The Greys are, and many other species. I've been to a meeting with 100,000 unique species. They showed me this on purpose, and it was in a huge auditorium. There were no two species alike. There were 100,000 species. They all had 2 eyes and opposing thumb on a finger system, and they were bipedal. And I was reporting what it was like to be a humanoid female living on planet Earth in the 21st century. And I was doing my own little personal State of the Union address to them, explaining what it was like. And I was asking them to please intervene because it was becoming, our society was becoming too perverse. And so that was taken into consideration at that meeting. So and that was just a representation of the millions of species in the cosmos, because there are many species that wouldn't fit in that type of environment that what I was in. But these 100,000 species could be in the type of environment that we needed in order to meet together as a group. So it's a huge picture when you start piecing it together. But I think the major ruling faction still is the Anunnaki. Are they controlled by reptilians?
No, I don't think so.
I hung out with David Icke for, and he has his beliefs. I've seen reptilians. I've interacted with reptilians. I don't think they're the ones in control.
Well, look, there's another sense, in a way, we're all hybrids, but the brainstem is basically what's known in physiology as a reptilian brain. It's concerned with greed and status and regulating the body, and it's cold, and fortunately it's overlaid by an emotional brain, the limbic brain, so we take our feelings into consideration, and that's overlaid with an intellectual left brain and an intuitive right brain, and there's your pineal, which is a spiritual brain. So you have all these things going. So nothing in the human condition is alien to any of us. We are also reptilian. We have tendencies toward wanting more for ourselves, but because we have these other brains or other subpersonalities that balance it, we can center ourselves between our reptilian needs and our emotional needs, for example.
You were talking earlier about, excuse me, that the Anunnaki are on this new directive to help, but it seems like where the power is moving at this point in time, it's not getting better. It is getting more polarized, or they're trying to exert more control over the population.
That is exactly true. So we're looking at this ever-widening continuum, and is it going to switch around? Well, in some levels it has. 20 years ago, or I'm 61. When I went to school as a child, if you were caught doing something bad, you went to the principal's office, and the principal was allowed to smack you. And so, right now, if the principal tried to smack a kid, spank them, he would go to jail. So we are, on some level, changing as a society, and we have. I don't know. What do you want to say, honey? Talk for a while here.
I'm not sure that things are really as bad. In existentialism, we say that the disrespect for consciousness, or the evil that bugs us, is what motivates us to address that. And the more we are perturbed by a perceived evil, the more our purpose comes to be righting it. So if you hate ugliness, your purpose becomes beauty. If you hate, as I do, injustice, then justice or fairness becomes your life purpose. And things, perhaps our challenges are getting so naked now that you have to decide, when are you going to be yourself? Where are you going to be yourself? This is the only time you got to do it now. And I think this is making people aware of that choice. And maybe that's the way it's always been.
Right, but it had to be so massive. It's in our faces, and so here we are in this point where, it's so obvious that something extremely perverse is happening in all levels. We were in this Leave It to Beaver fairy tale world for so many years, and we never really got anywhere because we kept feeling safe and comfortable. But now this polarity has shifted to the level that we could be facing a massive human extinction event. That it's our motivator to pull us to action. And I was just talking earlier today on another show. What can we do about Planet X, Nibiru coming, the pole shift, all these different paradigms? And it always comes back to self. What can you do personally about shifting your own self so you can reflect to the microcosm reflects on the macrocosm? And you can't control the universe, but you control yourself, and you can start being more of service to others than self-serving. Just stop being less selfish. We don't want you to give up yourself. You need to respect yourself and not be a doormat, but just start giving more than you receive, and you'll shift the balance, and it'll be like the Berlin Wall. I don't know if you remember that day when the Berlin Wall came down, but we woke up one morning and there were stories that the Berlin Wall was coming down, and by evening it was gone. And for the children of the 50s and the 60s after World War II, that seemed like it was going to go on forever, that all those poor people were trapped behind this wall and they didn't have any freedom. And all of a sudden, freedom was available for everybody. And I have friends that had to escape from the Berlin Wall, and it was horrendous. So we have a different variation on the Berlin Wall right now, which is the super rich that get everything, and the poor are starving and living on the streets and dying of diseases that are all curable. All these diseases are curable. They've had cures for ages now. They have a free energy system. So we are being murdered. 100,000 people a day are dying that if we had these new technologies and cures for the diseases would not die. And of course, what would we do that population? We'd have to rethink how we reproduce, and we'd have to also have the technology to reach out to the stars and begin a Star Trekian world where we explore and settle new planets.
Well, skip the technology. I mean, think about, what we end up eating and the quality of the air, and there's no water in California, and all of the things that we do to ourselves, each other, the planet, that does not promote health and long life here.
Right. So how much of that information is controlled and manipulated? We have our food being GMO'd, and it's been GMO'd all along, right? They genetically modified food back with the Anunnaki. That's how we had food to begin with. But the food was always designed to keep us short-lived. So if we had the information...
They were trying to create diversity. Monsanto is trying to prevent diversity.
Right. So it's gone backwards. So if we had all the information, right now we have a very highly controlled and manipulated society. One of the things you can do is stop watching TV. Stop listening to all the news, the mainstream news that just continually programs us with bullshit. Sorry, probably shouldn't say that.
But But I just find it interesting that, you use the term slave species, and I like to use the term we're a very domesticated species. We will just take whatever, throw some food on the ground over there, and we're just happy, like pigs in slop. And we don't do anything. We look at the stuff that we do see on TV, and no one really takes an action. Like, we're unable to. I mean, is that part of our programming?
It is to obey, and with the basic sanction for all human activity is nullity. If you stop participating, you can bring down any institution. So that, if the things that you hate, if you become conscious, as I said, you're starting to see how things work, and you stop shopping at Walmart or using products that have Monsanto in it or made by slave labor in sweatshops in Bangladesh, you boycott those products, and you support those activities that give you what you need, that are in harmony with the earth. I think that's the basic thing you can do, and we need to not get past a punitive attitude, an eye for an eye and the whole world gets blind, and have some kind of truth and reconciliation, and not to make the people that are successful the enemy. That's very foolish. What we need to do is to feel what they really need and let them feel you and what you really need, because they're people too. Then you can reach out. The Munich terrorists who killed the athletes years after, there was a study that showed they got jobs and wives and children, and they weren't terrorists anymore. And so perhaps that's what we really need to address, is those people that are doing terrible, outlandish, violent behavior. What do they really need? And I suggest what they need is universal, which is the right to have their consciousness respected, and the chance to grow and be healthy. That's my opinion.
That's a good opinion. And I'm just looking at the clock. Actually, let me take a question from the chat room. We have about 4 minutes before we need to go to break. And this is a question from Neutron. He asked it a really long time ago. Has Sasha or Janet ever found details of the nature of the 3 types of plagues Enlil initiated to destroy mankind? And then he put in parentheses, some say that the last may have been infertility, all of which was fought by cures created by Enlil and his brother.
Okay, so there definitely was evidence that they were spraying the fields around the year 1000, and the bubonic plague was probably one of them. We probably still have all the plagues. I was reading one time that one of the dangers of digging up like these ancient forests is that it unleashes ancient biochemical warfare, germs and viruses and stuff. So we've got to be careful about that. So the bubonic plague was one of them. What was some of the things
about the
plagues?
Well, we were talking also about the devastation that the Lord put upon Moses in Egypt, I think.
Yeah.
And with that, some of our people that we interview are saying basically that in the Cobran Bible, an actual observer was saying that this is Nibiru was nearing, that's his perigee, and there was a tremendous volcanic and earthquake movement, including the blowing up of Stromboli, which was called Thera in those days, which sent huge waves up the Nile and then back down the Nile. And this was preceded by a terrible release of gas from the earth, and that all the firstborn kids' sons slept by the door on the first floor of these 2-story Egyptian houses. And but the Israelites, the descendants of Joseph, had been warned of what was coming down by their Anunnaki ally Enlil, and so they closed the front door and had their kids' oldest son come upstairs. So all the Egyptian eldest sons got killed, but all the buildings were flattened. The Pharaoh's palace fell down. It was horrendous, and basically Enlil it took the not just the Israelites, those are the descendants of Israel or Jacob. There were 600,000 of them, but all the Egyptians that wanted to get the hell out of there, and they all got out of there. And it was not just the plagues were this series of the insects were disturbed, and they were there wasn't any fodder for the animals. There was cholera. It was just terrible. It was not just like a couple of days trip. It was months of horrendous changes in that part of the world. It's
okay, and on that note, we need to go to break. Okay.
Thank you.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages. And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. We've been here talking to Sasha and Janet Lessin about their book, Anunnaki, False Gods, and they don't sound like any kind and loving God I've ever heard of. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide, and also by by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer. So please do go visit both sites and support this show. Guys, before we went to break, we were talking about the Anunnaki and their role here on the planet in the past, and how much they have, I'm going to say, interfered with the development of life, not necessarily humanity, but of life on the planet. Did they ever leave? You made the comment that they tried to leave, but did they ever successfully leave?
Well, the whole leaving thing, which has been the debate in the Anunnaki lore for as long as I've been looking at it, I don't think it's that they have to wait for the Nibiru to get close to leave anymore. I think they have Stargate technology and they can come and go as they wish. But if we stick with that, okay, they left at 2150 and most of them left, well, then we start looking who left and who stayed. And so from my research, I'm following I have a lot of people on my team. It's not just myself. Sasha and I talked to many Anunnaki researchers, because we need a whole team of researchers to actually piece the puzzle together. And we could have a whole group that's just doing the cuneiform tablets and deciphering them. But we don't have that type of organization like the Illuminati do. So we're stuck with what we have. So we're researching here on the internet and we're pulling pieces together. And I have one fellow that's been, a couple of researchers are looking at the symbols. And the gods over time, depending on what culture they were in, they had different names. So Inanna, come over here, honey. Inanna was Athena, and what was Inanna's names? Enki was
Ishtar.
Poseidon, and so we think that Enki was Jesus. There's a faction that thinks that Enki was Jesus. So that means Enki didn't leave in 2150. Then did he come to the birth canal? Well, there's a story that the gods lay in stasis and they can send their essence down through the physical birth process. But then there's a story that the conception was just a warping of the story of the minds, or not the minds, the lab where they created human beings. And so that was the artificial insemination, was the lab in South Africa where they created the first Adam and Eve. So there's warpings of the stories on top of the warpings of the stories. So we're looking at the biblical, we're looking at the historical, and we're looking at who are these characters and did they leave and did they stay. So I don't think that Enki left. I think Enki's behind the crop circles. It looks like Enki, Ninmah, and Damkina have been traveling around the planet. It looks like maybe they left one place and who was in South Africa? Get in here, honey. Who was in South Africa and left? That was Nergal, but it was it Thoth? Was it
Erishkigal and
talking about South America. Who left in South America? That was
Adad was in South America.
Come here, closer here.
Okay, yeah, I have somewhat of a different dates than Janet has. It was around 2024 BCE is when they started cycling off the planet, mainly from their air. They had a takeoff place in Nazca, right near the city of Tiwanaku, and if the last of them to really leave that we know about was Thoth. Known, or Ningishita, who's known in this part of the world, in the New World, as Kuklan or Quetzalcoatl. He left in 311 BCE, and he said, I'll be back December 21st, 2012, and I'm bringing 15 other Anunnaki with me, and we're going to clean up the mess. But there were others that stayed, and namely, we know that Marduk, the prince that was trying to organize the humans, who wound up in charge of the earth after the nuclear exchange. He was the god of Babylon. So we know that he was here. Alexander the Great was probably his son and saw his body floating in oil in Siwa, way thousands of years later. But the Anunnaki could revive people, and he might have just, and then there's a question of, are they really reviving that particular person, or are they just making a clone or a being that is like the person that they've duplicated, but it's coming out at a different time? And so there's some definite questions we have about their technology, but some of them never left. Inanna, in some stories, never left. Nanar, we know Nanar, who is also known as Sin, S-I-N, Sinai, S-I-N-I-A, is named after him. He was induced to come back to Earth. During the nuking, he went off to Mars. Adapagupi, one of his priestesses in Haran in Turkey, found a piece of his clothes that had a communication device in it, and she contacted him and said, please come back and make my son king, and we'll restore your shrine in Haran here in Turkey, and in Babylon you'll be welcome too. And so Nanar came back, and we think Nanar probably was the one who grabbed Muhammad and is known to Muslims as Allah, but we think it's just probably Nanar.
And we think Nimma might be Mary that was at the Fatima prophecies, and she's the mother of Guadalupe. So we're looking at these characters through time, and we think that Enki is still here doing crop circles, because some of the crop circles
and Neil saw him.
It said that Enki was the author, the creator of the crop circle. What did you just say?
And Neil saw him, remember?
Oh, and then some people have seen...
Neil Freer.
Neil Freer has encountered Enki. I've encountered Enki, and people have encountered Marduk. Michael Hill encountered Marduk at a festival.
But how would you know that you encountered them?
Well... It depends on, who's reporting it. Michael Hill said that he was taken to a tent at a festival. He was encouraged to go to this festival, and he was taken to this tent, and then I recommend you get him on the show, and he describes what it was like meeting this person. It was not a human being. He later became an associate of, what was his name? Gordon. A.R. Borden, part of the Linkage Institute. Oh. And A.R. Borden was going to annual meetings with many different species, and primarily Anunnaki, but they had representatives of many different species. And it was in some secret location on or around the Earth. and he unfortunately died in 2013 because apparently he crossed a line in revealing information to humanity. But you want to research, if you can Google him, A.R. Borden, Bordon, and he was friends with Michael Lee Hill, and Michael was being groomed to be his protege and perhaps take over his seat in this council that meets. It's still ongoing. And then we have reports from, what was his name? Joanne Richards' husband, Mark Richards, and he reports how there is this organization and they meet on an ongoing basis, and there's many different species, and that the Anunnaki are at these meetings. So, and then some people meet like Neil Freer. He had kind of like an abduction encounter experience, and it was Enki that he met. Long before Enki was known in the modern literature, long before Sitchin wrote about him. And then I've had some experiences where I was encountering a being, and for many years this being wouldn't reveal to me who it was, and then finally he revealed himself, and he said that I'm Enki, and I've met Nimma as well. So is it real? Is it fiction? I don't know. I can only do my reality.
Okay, and let me ask you this question. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people and a lot of conjecture in this area. Was Enki a physical being? Was he an interdimensional being? Was he appearing physical but could go interdimensional if he chose to?
I think all the above. I think the Anunnaki are capable of going interdimensional. Actually, human beings are both third and fourth dimensional if you really look at it. When we go out of body, we're in the fourth dimension. When we die, we're in another dimension.
Dreams.
So dreams, we're in another dimension. So and I didn't invent, I think it was the Dr. Michael Newton Institute or somewhere else I was reading that humans think that we're third dimensional, but we're actually third and fourth dimensional beings. So that might be the true nature of reality, that we are multidimensional beings, and that when we focus our intention, we may, appear in one dimension rather than the other. But
what I find, Rita, is that different people symbol their experiences so differently, and it's in a way a bugaboo to worry unduly about whether it's empirical reality that you could knock on with your knuckles or not, but to just see what the person does with these concepts and what conclusions they come up with, because they're all valid if you just get into what the person's saying and what their reality is to them, I think.
Okay. One of the things that you were talking about before, and I was hoping you could clarify, you were speaking about that I guess the world was broken up into 4 territories and 4 factions. Could you go into that a little bit?
I'd be happy to. Yes. The initial rivalry between the clans of the oldest son of the king, a guy named Enki, who was given charge of the gold operations in Africa, and the commander of the overall expedition, which was the legal heir, the second son, Enlil, started this, and these people started squabbling with each other, and this powerful woman, the granddaughter of Enlil, started asserting herself too. So they finally, in 850 BCE, asked Anu to come down and try to settle things out. And so the first thing he did is he made love with his great granddaughter. They had a tantric ceremony. Everybody held hands and so forth. And so Inanna. So that put her, that mollified her for a bit. And then he ruled, let's divide up the territory. Enki gets the seas, and he gets Africa, and Enlil gets Sumer, and then Egypt will be the next part of first part of Africa you'll develop, and Inanna will get the Indus Valley. That can be the granary of every place else. And he flew off with this division. Well, Inanna was enraged. I'm going to get something that somebody else is going to get, and at least he gave me the temple that we made love in. Big deal. I want a city like everybody else. And so she started this incredible program, and so that led to she seduced Enki, who had the programs that could activate a cityhood, how to do everything, and got him drunk, and he gave her the programs, and she gave them to her aide, who hid them, and Enki tried to get them back, and the commander said, no, you gave them to her, they're hers now. So she developed both Uruk in Sumer, that was her temple complex, that's where Gilgamesh wound up being king, and also Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and Dolivarra on the Indus Valley, and she had and went back and forth between these two places. But her rivalry grew so great with Enki's son, Prince Marduk. Marduk got her fiancé murdered. She was going to marry Dumuzi, who was Enki's son, and bring the two clans together. And Marduk got Dumuzi killed, and so she was in a deadly battle for centuries with Marduk, who was basically the ruler of Egypt off and on. And they were continually at war with each other.
But why no female worship in the areas that she controlled? Why did it all turn patriarchal?
What happened was when Enlil was away at getting his base going at Tiahuanaco, and he brought his son Ninurta, who ran the cavalry. Inanna struck out on her own. She made an alliance with Enki's other son, Nergal. She took over, and she said, I'm higher than everybody. I'm going to build my own spaceport, and I'm going to take Nibiru too. I'm the king of everything now, and fuck daddy and granddad. I don't care. I'm going to take it. I'm taking over. Delete. That's the wrong word. Anyway, she took over. However, when Enlil came back, he sent the cavalry in, and he said, I want you to waste Akkad, which is the empire that Inanna was running. I want you to kill every part of that city and everybody from it and reestablish stuff. And I want Inanna arrested. Well, she ran and hid with her parents. Her parents sent her down to South Africa where Nergal could protect her. And she plotted how she was going to return. And after a while, Enlil did forgive her because she was a fantastic, fiery warrior, and he, again used her to conquer and rule for him.
Inanna's image is the owl, and she has a twin brother, Utu Shamash. And Utu Shamash is the image of the Statue of Liberty. They think it's a woman. That's a man. That's a androgynous-looking man. That's what Utu Shamash looks like. And Inanna is the owl at Bohemian Grove, and she's also the owl image that they use to design the city of Washington, D.C. So Inanna might be the one ruling the United States, and the United States is kind of ruling the world. That's what we're looking at.
It is just so I hope you have a lot of notes, you guys. Because it's just so intertwined and interconnected that I could see where it could just make your head spin.
Yes, it does. And it's interesting. Well, see, we just like doing this level of research. It's fun for us. We go into it, and our other researchers, we're talking about all these different nuances. So it's fun for us to try to figure it out. But I'm hoping someday they will, honor humanity, recognize us, and sit down and have a cup of tea and really start talking real with us and negotiating how to create a society that respects all life, including human life.
Well, you can see that these characters, which are the characters of the myths, whatever they really were in reality, they've become like paragons or models of certain types of characters that are within each of us. And so it's really worth looking at it. What I realize is that it's so far divorced from reality. I had put something up on my website, which somebody said attributed to Jesus, where he said, take care of the unfortunate, respect women, nice things like that. And I thought it was really groovy. And then scholars said, hey, Jesus never said that. And I said, well, I guess maybe the real historical Jesus never said it, but Jesus in my heart, the one that says love everybody and be kind, said it. And so I realized that, just like for me with that particular archetype, each one of these characters, Enlil Yahweh has become the law. And what does the law and the rules really want? Security, stability. Okay, so that's something of value deep down. What is it that infuriated Inanna? How unfair it was that the society was to women. And so there we have inside of each one of us the part of us that wants justice for women. Like that. So I think you can use these archetypes from the Anunnaki in a very positive way and an idiosyncratic way too.
What's their end game? What is it that they want from us, or do they still want something from us at this point in time?
What they want, what Enki, Nimma, and Ningishita are dedicated to doing is they want us to reach our spiritual potential. They know how smart we are, how clever we are with things and how things work, and they would like to see a compassionate species that takes this super intelligence and uses it in a synergistic instead of a destructive way.
And there's a faction that really likes their power and control and manipulation, and they don't want to give up the game. They like the game. The game is fun. They have someone to look their noses down at. They have someone, like you said earlier, they have their slaves to go to the market for them and to clean their houses. I was talking to a very high-powered woman one time, and I won't reveal names, but she was of the Illuminati, and she's there. What? You would have me give up all my money and be equal with everybody? No, they don't want to be equal. Now that's not a need. They don't want to be just like everybody. They want to have this hierarchy. So that's part of the problem. How do we get people to give up this hierarchy, and they think they need it, but it's actually something they just desire?
Okay, so you give them all the money, and then what? We just do all of our little stuff to keep society going so that they can take a yacht out that costs $1 million a night?
And stop participating in the system that supports them having all this money.
How do you do that, honey?
You basically form smaller cooperative units with the people in your ecological neighborhoods. There are so, I study with Carl Rogers, there's ways of mediating peace among any groups of people, no matter how hostile, by getting them to know each other as human beings and feeling for each other. We know how to do it. If we just are given a chance, we can bring peace the way Begin, Sadat, and Carter did as three grandfathers who said, what kind of world are we going to leave for our grandchildren? I think this is Camp David's a failure. Sadat said, they'll probably kill me for this back home, but I'm going for peace. And that's what we can do. Right.
Well, there's 6 degrees of separation. There's somebody that knows everybody, right? So if you're out there listening to the show and you have in the ear of someone that's in the power elite, try to reach out and humanize them. That's all we can do is reach those who we can and see if we can get them to change their minds, because they're not talking to us. They're just sitting up there on their, they're just like God up in heaven. They're not talking to us. They have everybody underneath them that are all puppets, and they have this operating system, this illusion that things are, good and fair and equal, but it isn't, and we know it. It's just become obvious. So I don't know, if we had a global strike and nobody did anything for a day or two, maybe that would do it.
I like the idea that Starhawk had. You'd have people go up to, say, Mr. Cheney one at a time and said, my sister died in that building that you brought down, and this broke up my family, and just have the humans confront each other. No punishment, no retaliation, but truth and reconciliation, and let people feel some of the karma, the pain that they've inflicted, and it can all be done. There can be a great catharsis.
So we have this upcoming election, and it's going to probably be Jeb Bush against Hillary. We've got 2 Illuminati agents, and it's just the same old, same old. So elections aren't it. Well, what do you think, Rita, Dr. Rita? What ideas do you have?
I think having people get off the grid and not participate is great. I think there are just so many. I think first people have to open their eyes to recognize that there really is a problem going on, and they're really not in control of their destiny. I mean, people go to work every day and the bulk of their money goes to paying the government or paying this fee or doing these things that you don't even need to do. And they don't really even have the opportunity to live at all.
Right.
And it just keeps them, with the blinders up, and we didn't even get into the big one, religion.
Yeah.
We're just kind of talking work and economics, which is huge. But, you throw the religious piece in, and there are so many people blinded by dogma that it's not even funny.
Yeah, the religions were the control mechanism that pitted us one against the other. It was my God's better than your God, and that was the original war. And so that's what's behind all the religions. And when you stop participating on that level, you get confused because there is spirituality, there is connection to source, there are higher powers. And you have to separate that from the religion. And what are the religions telling us to do? To march off to war. They've been telling us to, when I was a child, I went to Sunday school, and there was a group on Sunday night called Crusaders. And we sang Onward Christian Soldier. And at one point I looked back and I went, what are we talking about here? What are we singing? And I just quit. I'm not behind war. I'm not supporting this stuff of killing each other, killing people across the planet that I've never met. Well, I don't want to kill these people. So you start with yourself and take personal responsibility. And people aren't going to get off the grid, so at least be nice to the people in your life.
But it just seems so hypocritical. It's like, love your neighbor, don't kill, don't steal. And there's this whole kumbaya outward attitude that you get from religious dogma, when the reality is, it's like, if you don't believe in their God or their Jesus, they'll throw rocks at you. Literally.
No, they will. You ultimately encounter their brick wall where they justify their fighting with you, be it just an argument or disconnecting. And I've lost, since I've started studying ufology and this research, I've lost so many friends. They think I'm nuts, but it's like, hey, you got to start looking at it. But now it's turning around, and every day I get emails and calls. I think these shows are doing a lot of good, Dr. Rita. They said that these shows are the number one major form of communication that's going to replace television and radio and everything else. So we're on the cutting edge right here. Keep it up. Keep doing it. Sasha,
and it makes it so that, it's not censored, and it's not controlled by mainstream media, which is, thank God.
One thing to think about is that people actually do, even in the offices of official religion, have truly spiritual experiences, and we suggest that they imagine they could take that experience of oneness with the beautiful music and the feeling of oneness with the people and life and everything, and walk out of the church in your mind, or out of the synagogue or cathedral, and imagine, if you want to take Jesus with you or whoever, Buddha with you, can, and then say, are you my true guide, or would you like to introduce me to someone else who's my guide at this time? And then you can allow yourself to have a series of spiritual experiences and keep that. And if that church bothered you, you can burn it behind you, because this is just a mental exercise.
Okay. I like that. And you can burn it behind you. ...
Yeah. Dr. Lessin's been a psychotherapist for over 40 years. He can't help himself.
On this note, if you were to speculate, and Sasha, I'm going to throw this one at you first. If you were to speculate, if we were to break free of all of the Anunnaki programming, who would we be? What would we be like as a species, as a culture?
Oh, I think we would be so artistic. We are natural artists in all the different ways, and people would engage in trade of goods and services. They would engage in teaching each other music and dancing. They would have sports that don't hurt anybody or anything. Life would be a artistic celebration, I think.
Yeah,
they make love a lot.
They make love a lot, yeah. I was talking to... I've got to go meet Alex Collier this summer, honey, but I was talking to Alfred Weber and a bunch of people. We've been looking about what would life be like, beyond disclosure, and what kind of culture, society would we have once we have all this information. And one of the things that Alex said in his report to the Andromedans, who asked him to please do like a PowerPoint presentation and explain what this money stuff is. We don't get it. We're out here at the cosmos, and we aliens, we don't use money. We have a fair system of meeting people's needs. And so he did this whole demonstration for them, and they said, well, that's very interesting, but we still don't get it. We don't get it. Nobody else does this. But if you want to use it, after disclosure, we'll introduce you to the other systems. But how is it that you have a planet that the people who don't even ask to be born here are charged? So we have a planet where children are being born and they didn't ask to be born, and they're being charged just to live here. So it's a money-based system. So let's say we go beyond money and we start meeting the needs, the basic needs of everybody's life as a birthright, and everybody gets healthy food, clean water, air, and soil, unpolluted soil, and they get shelter, and they get some education that isn't propaganda, but it's real information that's viable for your life and how to live lives, and they have some other basic needs. Maybe the right to travel would be a great basic need. Just look at a needs basis. People would still work for luxury. You might be given a one-bedroom condo as your basic need, but people are going to want to live in the five-bedroom mansion. So they have to work. They're going to have to work for they might get basic transportation, but they might want their sports car, right? So people are still going to want to work. But I think once the needs are met, just like Sasha was saying, Dr. Lessin, we're going to become a more creative and artistic society, because we'll have the freedom to sing and dance and compose and do art. And perhaps like in a Star Trekian reality where they met the needs on board ship, those people became explorers, and they started developing their talents on different levels, became healers and things like that. I'm hoping to see it in my lifetime. That's what I've been working for since I was born. And, all we can do is envision it. If we can wrap our heads around it, we have a direction to go to. But right now, we have this reality where, we're all going to die before we're 100, or maybe 1 or 2 or 10 of us will make it over 100. So we've got to change our goals and where we can go as a collective, and then we can co-create this reality. So envision it first, imagine it, and then we can get there. That's why.
Well, I think people would work not for the things that they get, but for the enjoyment of doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would still want to write and, express myself. And I think musicians would still want to play and would still enjoy the excitement of playing in front of a large group of people, whether they got paid or not. I mean, I think it wouldn't drive us as much, and we would do it more from the heart, but, versus the wallet where we are now.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful world to see, where you do things that feel good to you spiritually or emotionally and make your heart full, rather than, how much money do I have to make today? Because it's kind of like an in-between phase. You're getting what you need by working your butt off, but you can get your needs met by connecting to other human beings and feeling one another and experiencing love. Ultimately, I think life is about love.
If the gods weren't around, so to speak, that we're humans, I mean, I could see where the gods at some point in time were here interacting with humanity, and where humanity could have been their slaves or whatever. But as we come more forward in time, and I'll say more into biblical times, Abraham, Noah, the relationship, the one-on-one relationship with the God or the gods became much more limited, way less casual. What were we doing for them? I mean, I guess I keep having this disconnect. We're doing this stuff.
We were definitely, what we were doing, we were being their proxies in wars. For example, Jezebel, who married Omi, and was queen of Israel. She was the daughter of the king of Tyre. And they wanted to establish a Phoenician Israeli alliance, and she brought with her the idea that you can have shrines for many gods. You can have Inanna, and you can have Marduk, and you can have Yahweh Enlil too, and so forth. Well, Enlil got her killed. He got this guy Elijah to get her killed, and Jebu got everybody in Israel killed, and the Syrians took over, and so forth. And so what happened is they went into these proxy wars where they're getting all of these people killed to try to kill the other God's people. And they're still doing it to this day.
Yeah, we still have wars in the name of God. So we're still. So what's your question? What were we doing for them?
What we were doing for them is being pawns. We're being little instruments of murder.
It keeps this reality going, and they keep having wars are the major generator of money. So it's shifted to a money situation. So where does the money end up going? It ends up going to the top of the pyramid and into the hand of the power elite. And you can see how they keep eliminating the opposition, and we're getting less and less diversity. And so follow the money. That's what war is about right now. Follow the money.
It makes me want to break out in some Black Sabbath or something.
Yeah.
Well, with everything that's going on, a couple of years ago, they were talking about Greece collapsing, and, the United States doesn't have any money, and we're like trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. Now China doesn't have any money. And my question is, well, who has all the money?
What is the money anyway?
What is the money? We're the one that gives money power over us. I once read a book called Time Enough for Love by Robert Heinlein. They were colonizing other planets, and the Heinlein's character Lazarus Long opened up a bank, and 1 week he had chickens as the backing on this frontier place, and then he changed it to corn, and everybody was all upset, and they go, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, what do you think money is anyway? You're the one that gives it power. I'm just setting the parameters." So yeah, that's a good question. What is this money stuff? So if we see it collapse, we have people saying, "Yeah, let it collapse, let it collapse." We'll have who knew. Maybe we'll get back to basics, and we'll be human again. We won't be worried about money. We'll be more like cooperation. But then again, who knows? They might just come down the road, and it'll be these little armies that'll just kill us all off.
So
it's going to be an interesting thing to see.
The crises we now are experiencing, if you look at it in a system way, are leading to perturbations or disturbances in the system that are becoming increasingly great, which are going to either shatter the New World Order or allow it to evolve into something much higher. And what higher has to look like is we have to stop nuclear proliferation on this planet in space, and we have to stop warring. We have to have a government that basically is a peaceful government in which people are supported in their development of their consciousness. That's where we're going. And if we're not there now, then the challenge of not being there is what gives us direction and vitality. So dig it.
I mean, we're all going to die if it's this current paradigm. Nobody gets off this rock alive. So do I live another 5 years, another 20 years, another 50 years? I don't know. So what can we do while we're alive, while we're here? And it seems like we're powerless in this game. It doesn't seem like that the people that are doing the game want to actually end the game, or they would have done it. They're going to continue doing what they're doing, most likely. And so they keep pushing the parameters of the game. And what does that keep us doing? We're like a bunch of mice running around, or chickens running around with our heads off. Where can we fit in this game? Where can we maximize? We're caught up in it. We're playing the same game they are, but on a lower level. We're trying to maximize our own lives at the cost of who else? So you've got to stop participating on that level. I'm going to stop being me against the apparent other. I'm going to be me and the apparent other, at least in my own life. And if everybody did that across the globe, it's game over.
With ideas of like the New World Order, on the surface, it's like, oh, well, if we have this one government, then we can all be like hanging around in a kumbaya moment. But one, I get the impression that that is far from the case. And if it is all about control, then who is controlling it? We've been talking about these different warring factions that have been going on the earth. And so which faction would control the New World Order? Or does that even go back and forth between groups?
Right now, the Illuminati, and there's different factions within it. The people that control most of the wealth in the world, the Lees, the Rothschilds, the really super rich people. That's the ones that are controlling all of this, and that's where it could be stopped. They see the basic assumption that these people with bloodline senses of entitlement have is that they think because they have certain kind of descent, they're better than other people. And that's such a profound error because you miss the contributions of everybody else. Everybody's light is just as valuable as everybody else's, and it needs to be nurtured in its own individuality, in my opinion.
Right. So who's the top of the dung heap? We don't know. We're looking at it. There's a fellow from the Red Dragon Society. Apparently they're called dragons. I guess the red is the Chinese and the black dragon. So that part I haven't quite figured out yet. I don't know if you've had any researchers on. I've been trying to get some interviews so I can figure out what's going on. I keep asking.
Actually, last week I just had Leo Zagami on, who's a Vatican insider, part of the Illuminati there, and he says that it's the Pope. And I was like, get out of town. And he said that all of the power structures all revolve around the Pope.
That makes sense.
So who is the Pope? Is the Pope a Homo capensis, like, what was her name? The banker. She said that they weren't even human. Karen Hudis. Is the Pope a Homo capensis? And is the Homo capensis Anunnaki? Is Akhenaten a Homo capensis? That's the big skulls, So we're looking at that faction. So if it ends with the Pope, and the Pope is the king of the whole planet, then are we?
Well, and it's not necessarily the Pope person, but the Pope role. Because what he was saying that right now Pope Francis was put in to help deal with all the scandals that were going on in the church, and so he was, they just kind of like put somebody in that role. But it's that organization. And so who's actually running that organization? I didn't ask that question.
So it's a Catholic Church. So which Anunnaki go? That's Yahweh. So Yahweh's at the top. The Pope is just a puppet. It's just a figurehead, just like Obama is and everybody else, Putin. They're all figureheads. They're all good actors, just out here playing these roles, and they're good at public speaking, and et cetera, et cetera. But so it's Yahweh, which is Enlil. So Enlil rules the world. And that might be it, because he was given command of the earth by his father Anu. And maybe nothing changed. So the two major factions that are probably battling for top king of the whole planet right now are Marduk, who was supposed to inherit the role of the king of earth, and Yahweh Enlil, who was given command by his father Anu. Now Anu does not want Marduk to rule, even though Marduk is his grandson, because he is also the grandson of Alalu, and Alalu was Anu's main competition back on Nibiru. So that's why we think things shifted. That's why he decided to not give Enki's line rulership of the earth, because it became, in Anu's mind, became polluted because the children of Enki are from Alalu's seed. And that's how petty and competitive they get. Their hierarchy is based on their DNA, and it's not even just their caste or class, it's their own personal DNA. They think, Anu thinks that his DNA is the best on the whole, in all the worlds.
It's like the War of the Roses.
Yeah. There we go. Now we know who it is. Okay. So what do we do about it? Well, we still want them to come and meet with our ambassadors. Who will be me, Sasha, and you, Rita. We'll be the ambassadors.
When they say get more gold, we want to be able to say we'd be glad to exchange our extraction services for some medical technology and some anti-pollutant technology and things like that. We're not infants anymore. We want to be educated. We're capable as you are.
I would just take them a bunch of Hanukkah gelt and call it good. Maybe they wouldn't notice. It's got chocolate inside. Hey, that's good.
Yeah, so that's why when I went before this, I was before this 100,000 being council, and I said, help, we need the perturbation, we need the outside intervention, because we're just hamsters on a wheel going round and round and round, generation after generation. We keep being born, live, die, we probably reincarnate, and we're still in the same old game. How many thousands of lifetimes do we have to do this? When can we get off this prison planet? Is there a way out of this system? And so I'm rooting for the disclosure of the Federation of Planet and Galzu and the creator of all to come down in here and change this paradigm, because I think humanity has paid its dues and we have a right to evolve and get off of this paradigm, this perverted paradigm, into the sacred matrix, is how I perceive it.
I think the time is right now for you to not be limited anymore, all of you who are listening, but to realize you have many, many options, and you are the chooser. And there's not an external God that's going to make your choices for you, but you are the chooser.
And we all need to choose. And a lot of people can't get out of their own way, which is the saddest part.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things that I find in talking to people who can't get out of their own way is to have some sympathy for that conventional or social self that they had to develop in order to get some love and attention in this world, and thank that self for its contributions and ask if it would please step aside and let some other parts of the person that have been wanting to come out.
Right, because that's the programming that goes in. We're born with the God virus and the antivirus against the other concept. So that's the giggle factor that's in the media, and that's our self-censoring, that we won't even open our minds to explore other possibilities, other realities. But if we can, there are more of us every day are putting aside that, because this reality is so perverted, it's not working for them. So then they're looking for what else, and that's why things like these shows are getting more and more popular, and people are looking at YouTubes, and I think we just need to keep it up. Those who are awake, keep waking up people every day. Wake up 5 people, wake up another person. If you're awake, each day. That's what someone said. They go around, they say, have you ever seen a UFO? That was Ray Hernandez. He says, have you ever seen a UFO? He'll go to a complete stranger, and he said, it's amazing, just something like that. Or have you had a near-death experience? Some kind of question like that will wake up another person, and they'll go home and they'll be transformed. And perhaps that's what we can do. Like lighting one candle at a time. Just wake up one person every day.
During the break, we were talking briefly, and we're getting close on time, so this needs to be a short answer. But we were talking about the Georgia Guidestones and the population numbers on there. Do you think there might be too many people on the planet for us to really get back to basics and be real?
Do you want to take that one? Okay. I think there's a logical number for any kind of sphere, any system, right? And so we do need to analyze that number that based on our technology and our resources. Each planet has an optimal number. And when I was a child, there were only 3 billion people. It depends on if we get the technologies released, we could probably have 20 billion people. But right now, based on our current technologies and information, it seems like 7.5 billion is too much. And we are like a Petri dish, the bacteria on a Petri dish consuming the dish. Sasha wants to say something.
Oh, just a long time ago, back in the 60s, a demographer named Moni Nag showed beyond the shadow of a doubt that when women have the right to say no to pregnancies, and they are educated in modern birth control methods, and they're even better now, that they will limit their children to those that they can do well by, especially if they know there's low child mortality. And so education and justice are two of the basic ways that you can get population under control.
Right. Otherwise, we'll start dying off en masse, or we'll have a war and the population will go back. It's probably going to reduce itself no matter what, unless we get all the information and technology. If you just look at it logically, we're reaching that tipping point where something will happen, perhaps on a major level, but it's not necessary.
I hear that.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the clock. We have like 2 minutes. So we talked today about your book, Anunnaki, False Gods. But I know that, Sasha, you're always writing something. Can you tell people, like, if they want to get this book or any of your other books, or, keep informed of what you guys have going on, where they can do that?
Oh, all our books are available at Amazon.com or Enki Speaks on Facebook, or EnkiSpeaks.com. And one of the things that we'd really like to stress in our last book, Anunnaki, False Gods, is that there are sacred places that the Anunnaki have deliberately left all over the world on a grid of ley lines, where if you meditate, you can transcend your usual self and actually commune with the Anunnaki and with your higher self. So that go to sacred places and see which ones appeal to you in the book and meditate there.
Right, and we have Anunnaki Gods No More, Anunnaki Legacy of the Gods, and Anunnaki False Gods. And then I have my book, which is the first in a series, which is kind of like an autobiography, but it's more. And it's called, what's it called? Dance of the Souls. And the book one is Pierce the Veil. And we have another website called Aquarian Radio, where we keep all of our archives of our shows. And we'll have this archive here and the link here for the show we're doing today with you, Dr. Rita. And, just feel free to write us anytime. Aquarianradio@gmail.com is the best place to write. And, we'd like to hear your opinion. Come up and post on one of our sites. Find us on Facebook. We're all over the place. This is all we do. We're obsessed. And we're here to change the planet. We're here to do something. And every one of you can do something about it. Don't just sit there. Do something.
Yeah.
Positive.
Excellent. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Our pleasure.
This was great.
Thank you for having us. We really enjoyed it.
All right. Well, aloha.
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 All right. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
That's Sasha and Janet Lessin. Their web pages are EnkiSpeaks.com, extraterrestrials.com. The book is Anunnaki, False Gods. And next week, we're going to be speaking with Robert.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio.